Yo, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This morning I was going through all my tackle boxes, kind of reorganizing things and putting new leaders on all my setups, and figured, hey, why don't I go ahead and share with y'all all of the new stuff I'm going to be throwing for this fall time transition and then moving forward into winter as this weather gets cooler. Just share with you all what I'm going to be throwing and then kind of a little bit of the thought process and what I'm thinking, why I'm throwing this stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. So for our first setup, I've got this one right here, and this is going to be my Topwater rod. So I want to have a Topwater setup just because I always want to have a Topwater setup. Let's just say you get out there early in the morning, maybe you got a light or something you can go fish, or you're just hearing fish come up and smacking the top of the water. You want to get into action. Always got to have this bad boy tied on. All of my reels, all of my setups, everything I'm about to show you has got 10-pound braid spooled up on it, and then I've got a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. So if you don't hear me say it for the rest of the reels, just know it's all the same stuff. And yeah, so this setup in particular is going to be my Shimano Vanford. It's a 3000 series spinning reel. I got the little power knob on there. Ooh, make sure that's not gonna hit the fan. And it's paired up to a light or medium light action old 18 rod. I like this rod. I'd love to have that like kind of not super light action, but enough like fast action in the tip to really help you kind of twitch and walk the dog. I really feel like it's just a great setup for using the Topwater and any other stuff that you kind of have that real twitchy action for. Moving forward with the setups, I've got my big suspending bait setup. So suspending bait, basically it's like something that sinks very slow in the water column. Right here I've got my Corkies. This is a Fat Boy Pro, I believe. It's a Fat Boy, but it has a rattle inside of it. And the reason I'm throwing this is because as the weather gets a little bit colder, the bait availability kind of changes a little bit. So there's less and less of that tiny small bait for all these fish to go and just destroy during the summertime. There's so much bait, it can be very hard to throw and get a reaction to these big old things because they're just eating all the little stuff. It's so abundant. But as that bait availability is reduced as the weather gets colder, they are more willing to hit big old mama lures like this, and that slow sinking action, they just come and whack it on the drop. I personally haven't used the Corky all that much. I have a ton of them. Y'all will see in my box here in a little bit. And I'm just still waiting. I'm excited to throw this as the weather gets colder because I just want to get one of those old classic Corky thumps. As far as the reel itself, this is like a twin Vanford, same thing as my Topwater setup. And then this rod is actually a medium power, so it's a little bit of a stiffer rod here. I feel like I don't really like twitch this one as much as I would my Topwater. With this, I'm kind of doing like twitch, let it drop, maybe give it a pause, twitch, pause. Like I'm still working on my cadence with this thing, so it's a work in progress, but I think the medium power rod does just fine. So this next setup is going to be like a smaller presentation for a slow suspending bait. So right now I've got on there, let's see if we can get this to focus, a little 1/16 ounce swim hook to keep it weedless. I plan on putting a gulp shrimp on this, one of those new penny gulp shrimps. But also alternatively, if I want to take off this hook and fish something like this, a little shrimp, I just feel like in this fall time there is still that little bait available. Like I will see grass shrimp jumping up into my boat occasionally, and sometimes you get to the fish and they're just not willing to hit those big old things. So I do want to keep some smaller options on the boat, and I think these little guys are perfect. Suspending bait, just not as big as something like the Corky. So the reel itself is going to be the Shimano Stradic CI4, and that is a 1000 series, and I've got her paired up to a old 18, and this is my lightest setup here because I really need that extra light action to fling out the super small lures like those little shrimps and the gulp shrimp and stuff, especially when I want it to be super lightweight so it sinks slowly. It can be a little bit tough to sling that stuff out there with a super heavy rod. So this is a true ultralight setup right here, and I've never had an issue bringing in big fish with this, or big fish for inshore, so like big 27-inch reds, 28-inch reds. I've brought them in on that setup before, never had an issue. So for our next setup, I wanted to present those fish with something a little bit bigger that I can swim. So I've got a nice big old, I think this is like 5-inch, maybe 5 or 4.5-inch paddle tail from Hoagie's right there. And I've got that on a 3/8 ounce jig head with a little twist lock up here at the top. Again, the bigger the presentation with this bait availability, you're gonna be able to target those bigger fish that are willing to hit something like this. And with the less small baits available, as it gets colder and colder, they're gonna be more willing to hit it. So I'm just like, why not get ahead of the game, try it out, you know, if we're not getting any bites, downsize. So the reel on this setup is going to be the Daiwa Fuego right there. This is another 3000 series, spooled up with a 10-pound and a 20-pound leader. And it's on a medium power old 18 rod, so a little bit of a more stiff action, but I figure, you know, if I get a big old trout or redfish to come and whack this thing, I want a little bit of backbone just in case I'm fishing around pilings or whatever it may be. I really want to get them out of there before they break me off on this light line. And for our last setup, I've got right here just a normal old 4-inch paddle tail. So this right here is the Hoagies, and this paddle tail gets it done, man. He's got like, I don't really know exactly what it's called, but something with this tail is like kind of a shrimp imitation. It's not like your big old boot paddle tail that you'll see on other lures. So something about this, man, it gets those fish all wired up and they come and smack it. I definitely wanted to have this just as a smaller option to kind of swim a lure. Let's say I'm swimming that big old paddle tail, I'm not getting bites. The same thing with the suspending stuff. I just want to downsize and see if maybe they're just not ready to bite something so big. So for the reel on this setup, we've got the Lose Custom Pro right here. That is a 1000 series, and I've got her paired up to a old 18 medium light action rod right there. So with this setup, I kind of want to get a smaller, like a lighter action rod, maybe an ultralight or a light action, just to keep it more akin to that small suspending bait setup I have. But I don't know, I'm gonna see how this works out, because the paddle tails, I usually am throwing a bit of a heavier jig head, anywhere from 1/8 of an ounce to 1/4 of an ounce, and these plastics are just a tad bit bigger. I might not need to go so light on the tackle, but it's to be determined. This is a new setup that I just got ready for fall time fishing today. So yep, that's gonna be the last setup. Now let's go ahead and jump into the tackle boxes and show y'all what I'm working with. So right here is the tackle box. I wanted to give y'all one real quick view of everything in there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out one by one and show you, talk about the lure itself. And this right here is tackle box number 2. So for tackle box number 2, I've got a ton of big old Topwaters. Like I said, I want to throw bigger presentations. I've got some slower sinking, like suspending baits. So right here is like a 5.5 inch Mike Buka bull mullet. So I think this will have a really nice action there underwater. Definitely gonna be wading some real like shallow water for big trout this winter. These are gonna be some of those lures that I wanna be throwing. Then we have a ton of these Corkies. I have so many Corkies, I'm like a Corky collector. I literally never throw them. I don't know anything about them. Like I have to do a ton of research to figure it out. Like I know this is a popular Corky, I just don't know what it's called. But yeah, the smaller one, it's a little smaller than the big fat boy. I got this one. I know it's called like the Devil something. He's got that little bead tail. And yeah, I got one of these. And then I've also got a couple just regular fat boys here. Actually, they're not regular. These are Bad Custom fat boys. Got them at the fishing show. And then we got this as well, just another fat boy. So tons of Paul Browns. I'm really excited to throw these. Like I said, not a lot of experience with them. I'm still waiting on that nice Corky thump. So hopefully we get it here this season. And then with the smaller box, I just have a ton of assorted like soft plastic. So right there, those are some 4-inch paddle tails. And I just wanted to have a big assortment. So if we can see, can we zoom in on that? Hey, come on. Can we just, there we go. So you can see that tail is just a little bit differently shaped than the one here on our Hoagies. Come on, man. There we go. So that Hoagies has got a bit of a smaller paddle tail. Like I said, if you're on the fish and you're just not being able to get those bites, it helps a lot to be able to just quickly switch in and out of stuff just to see, is it the action that's you know, getting these fish to bite? Is it the color that's getting these fish to bite? Or are they just straight up lockjaw that day? So I really wanted to have that. And I've also got some jerk bait options here. So this is just a little simple jerk bait and a bigger paddle tail presentation, a little bit of a longer tail there, and it's not that like super shrimpy style one. It's a real actual like create a lot of vibration for those fish. Along with that, I've got a couple of different style jig heads here. So that's one of those twist lock ones, some swim hooks just in case I need to go weedless, and then also got some smaller jig heads. There we go. And that's gonna pretty much do it for all my tackle. So I already kind of talked about why I selected each lure and, you know, my thought process behind it, but before we go here, I just want to re-summarize everything so you really get the full picture and on the whole like bait availability deal. So as we move into the colder months, the weather gets a little cooler, the more like small fickle baits like these little tiny grass shrimp and little baby menhaden and stuff like that are going to die off. They just can't handle that cold weather, and these big hardy suckers like a mullet are gonna survive. So, you know, with the less and less small bait available in abundance, those bigger fish are gonna be a little more keyed on and willing to hit big lures like this. So as we move in, it's still kind of warm. There are still those little guys, so I want to have those smaller options, those two lighter setups, but I don't want to completely rule out the thought that a big fish might be willing to come and hit this as it gets colder. So I really wanted to have two of each, a big suspending, a small suspending, a big swim bait and a small swim bait. And then I love the topwater, so I have to have a topwater setup. And that's really the gist of it. Just wanted to cover all my bases and still have options when I get out there, and you know, maybe they're not hitting the big stuff, so I have the small stuff. I'm sure you guys get the idea, but if you learned anything from the video or you enjoyed it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up for me, and you guys have a great rest of y'all's day. Peace.